We are back again for round two with this Camaro. This is a 5.3 turbo Camaro running Holley EFI. This car is the one I had on here before, and we had the throttle hanging issue and stuff like that, and a few other little things, but mainly it wasn't making enough boost, so it wasn't really making any power. So he's back, and we're gonna up the boost. What we're gonna do is we are going to change the wastegate spring first. All right, so we're gonna change that to a 9-pound spring. So that's gonna give us 9 pounds of boost as our base. And then we're gonna add a Mac 3-port solenoid. This is the same type of solenoid that you'll commonly see sold by, AEM and Holley and Haltech and really any of those companies. A lot of companies take that solenoid, rebadge it, sell it. Not to knock them, but you can get that solenoid for pretty cheap if you just go to like an industrial supplier. As long as you have the part number, I mean, you can get them for $20. They're relatively cheap and they do the job. So first off, got to pull that wastegate off down there so we can change the spring. And once that's done, can start wiring everything up to the Holley EFI. All right, we got our springs out. It's had a red spring and a natural spring. They were stacked together like that. That should have been about 7.5 pounds is what the chart said. But as I said before, the car only made 6, and I actually just looked at a data log. It made 6 pounds, falling to 4.5. So that lets us know we may have a leak or something somewhere. Or it could just be a lot of exhaust restriction. This thing does have a pretty small turbine housing on it, so it could be something like that. We'll see. But we're gonna switch over to this big green spring. Goes in there like that. And also gonna add this fitting to the top of the wastegate so that we can add pressure from our boost solenoid. So that's how this works, is that you're gonna put pressure on top of the spring. So, and that's gonna be regulated by what you tell the solenoid to do. And the way we'll have it set up, it'll be normally closed. And the boost control function is gonna tell this when to let air pass through and add pressure on top of the gate. And when you add pressure on top of it, that's gonna go higher than the spring pressure. And in this case, typically you can go twice the amount of your spring pressure is what you usually can do with a 3-port solenoid. Sometimes you don't quite get there, but usually you can get to twice the amount. So since I'm still waiting on that bracket for the boost solenoid, I'll go ahead and make my way to the inside and get going on the wiring. So this car, the ECU is mounted on the firewall up there, so it's not too bad to get to the ECU connectors, so that won't be a big deal. One thing that I did run into on this is that I think I may have talked about this before, but on the Holley HP, you don't have a lot of inputs and outputs. You actually only get 4 additional outputs and 4 additional inputs. But what they don't tell you is that you can't do anything you want with those 4 inputs and outputs. So some will work for ground, some will work for power, some will work for PWM output. So this car, actually, the way they have it set up right now, from the original install, they have 2 electric fans on it, and they're using 2 separate outputs for those. This car really doesn't need to stage the fans. I could run both those fans all the time, and it wouldn't really be a big issue. And I'm gonna have to, because I need one of those outputs for my boost solenoid. So this is the sort of thing that you really have to think about when you're deciding on what ECU you're going to choose for your project. You really need to look at what functions do I need now, what functions am I going to need in the future, and things like that, because you could find yourself in a situation like this where you do have to decide between having one function or another. So usually your entry-level ECUs won't have as many inputs and outputs because the user doesn't really usually need all of that stuff. But we'll be fine for now, but think about that when you're picking your ECU definitely go through those menus and look and see how many inputs and outputs does it have, what am I gonna need, and go from there. A lot of times things can be repurposed, but not every pin is available to do anything you want to do. Some can only be ground output, some can only be a hot output, and not all can do PWM. So you just have to look at that. So, all right, here we are again with this red Camaro. We've already got the wastegate spring installed. We've got the boost solenoid installed, and we also rerouted the catch can so that we could get rid of that whole issue of filling it up after 2 runs and spewing oil all over the place and making a mess. So one other thing that I did find out during the downtime between getting this car back on the dyno and getting it tuned and everything was some more details about the engine. And these details actually make everything make sense as far as what I was seeing before. If you watch the first video, I talked about it a little bit where the boost was going about 6 pounds of boost and then it was falling down to 4 pounds of boost. And it didn't really make sense to me with this size turbo on a 5.3 why it would do that. But it did look like it does when I see this size turbo on like a 6 liter. I contacted the engine builder, Butler Performance, and I found out that this engine does have a 4-inch stroke crank in it, and the displacement comes out to 363 cubic inches. So it's not a 5.3 anymore. So everything that I was seeing makes sense. Usually when I see a 76, 75 on a 6 liter, the car will make pretty good mid-range, and then the power will it'll just fall off up top. And a lot of times it's the same thing. It can't hold the boost level that it has in the mid-range up top. Now, when I've encountered that before, it's usually been on a car that's maybe either just running off of wastegate spring, or it has a manual boost controller, or maybe it even has an electronic boost controller, but something very simple that you just set one duty cycle for the boost solenoid, and it just carries that all the way out. The benefit of us having the Holley control in the boost, or any other quality standalone, is that we can control boost in more than one way. So I can actually ramp up the solenoid duty as the RPM gets higher, and I can keep that boost going steady. All right, we're 2 pulls in and we're not spewing oil out of it, so that's a good sign. Things are looking pretty good. I got to smooth out a little bit of idle surge, it's kind of annoying, probably just from the way we changed some of the routing and stuff. It may have had just a little bit of a vacuum leak before, I don't know, but I'm gonna fix that and then turn the boost up. Let's go ahead and make some power and get through this. All right, so we got our boost relatively smooth now. It's not falling off. It's pretty much carrying out. I think I'm losing maybe about a half a pound at the end. I'll touch that up a little bit, but I just wanted to get where I at least had the same boost all the way across. And you can kind of see a little bit of difference of boost falling off 2 pounds versus boost staying steady. I mean, it's not a ton. It's about 15 horsepower or whatever, but at least we know where we're at now. Now, as we get up into the higher boost, it's probably still going to fall off, but I'm just trying to build a based wastegate duty table just so I can build off of that. So in the Holley EFI, I like to use the map pressure control table, because that way I can set up the base duty for different map pressures, and then when I go over to whether it be time based or speed based or whatever, I can actually just put in the amount of boost that I want, in there and just build a curve like that instead of actually having to add in you know, duty cycle of what we're running the solenoid at. So it takes a little bit of extra time to build that out, but it usually makes it easier for my customer if they're at the track and, you know, let's say the car's not hooking and they want to get a little less boost off the line, or maybe the track's good and they want to get a little bit more, whether it be a you know, normal 3-port solenoid like this or CO2 solenoid setup or whatever. They won't have to figure out the duty cycle or the dome pressure that they're going to run it at in order to get to that target boost, because I will have already done the work in this table that pretty much runs in the background. They can just say, hey, give me 10 pounds of boost, and boom, that's it. And there's closed loop control that, you know, if it's a couple of, you know, percent off on the duty cycle or whatever, you know, you set it up where it can compensate a little bit. You don't want it, you know, relying on that. I usually just leave a light amount of adjustment in there so it can just give us that flat line of boost and not be jumping up and down as we go. All right, getting that boost curve dialed in better. 12 pounds boost, 616 horsepower. All right, I don't know how good this is gonna come out on video, but that blue line is our target boost. The red line that's running along with it is our actual boost. It's almost right on top of it. It gets about 0.1, 0.2 over. Boost there. That's not going to focus. But the pink line here is our solenoid duty. And as you can see, as we get into higher RPM, that solenoid duty has to get higher and higher and higher in order to maintain our boost level. So that's just the way that we're going to kind of overcome the nature of the turbo setup. Of course, we can only do that for so long. As we get into higher amounts of boost, which we won't get to the point of like maxing this thing out probably on this car, because it's, you know, on 93, so probably only going to go a few more pounds on it, just get this guy going. So we're at 12 pounds now. I'm probably just gonna go up to about 15. I think they'll be fine for where we're at with this car. He's new to racing and stuff like that, so he's gonna have to get comfortable driving it, and I think that'll be a good place to stop. All right, so we're all done, and those are our final numbers: 645, 590, whereas before we were at 482. And the torque, why is it not showing? Torque was about 450. So you ought to feel quite a bit of gain from where it was before, and it should be a lot of fun. Still 93 octane. We're not going crazy with it. That's 15 pounds of boost. I don't know, maybe we can get a little more with some better fuel, but I think eventually what we're going to do is run out of turbo. So, but really that's it. So hopefully we can hit the track with it soon, and he can get comfortable in the car, and that's that. Hope you guys enjoy watching. Thanks to Jay, as always, for throwing this video together for me, and we're going to keep on trying to bring you content.